purpose of bringing it. Chris and I did the March for Life, March for Your Life in Mentor, not Mentor, Medina. And we were marching around the square, about 50% high school students and 50% parents. And a gentleman showed up with an assault weapon with his NRA hat on, and he marched around the square. And the kids blew out from him about 100 feet in both directions, and they were frightened. That man should not be allowed to carry that gun in an open carry situation. That's not somebody with a holstered weapon at their side to protect themselves. That's someone who's there to intimidate these kids. You don't have a right to say you have a right to live. I have a right to own a gun and carry it anywhere I want at any time. So those are my those are my three main issues for me. The healthcare crisis is easily addressed. Guns is going to be hard. But I personally, I grew up in Youngstown. There's not too many people in Youngstown that don't own a weapon. It's kind of comes with the city itself. I am a gun owner. You know, I've always owned a weapon. It's in a gun safe. I'm concerned as a mother of 3 teenage boys. It's our young men doing this. So I'm always concerned because these kids seem to come from gun families, and here I am, I'm a gun family. You know, and I come from a gun family. And our children don't choose to hunt. I've offered to take them hunting, which is how I was taught to shoot. None of them want to hunt, and I don't take them target practicing. Because for me, they're separate. You know, certainly when they get old enough and they want to protect their homes, fine, I'll teach them. And hunting, I'm fine with 12 or 13 and up, because that's when I learned to hunt. But I don't like them thinking of it as a toy, like these single shooter games. And I know a lot of people say single shooter games have nothing to do with it. We have to deal with our gun culture in our country, and we're not like any other country with that type of gun culture. So we have to look at all aspects along the way. We can't just say, well, everyone has those games. Well, everyone doesn't have the access to guns that we do. So we have to put it all together. I'm not opposed to that kind of restriction. You might always push me for the mature games. I want that single shooter game in the basement, you know, and we have to limit the time, like any other parent does, and make sure that they're connected with reality. I wish they would learn to hunt, because the first time you kill something, you get it. The first time you shoot something, and for my sister and I, who both went into medicine, then tried to save it, you know, you get that, you grasp it, you understand it. It's no longer a game or a toy or something fun to shoot. You get what you're doing. But at this point, none of my boys want to hunt. I finished my bachelor's degree at Baldwin Wallace undergraduate while working full-time. I'm also very active in my community. I have been on the board for Providence House, which is a near west side of Cleveland charity that takes in children 0 to 12, whether parents are getting treated or for drug addiction or their homelessness, and we'll take the children for up to 6 months while mom or dad get resituated in housing or whatever. And I've been on an active board for 12 years, another 8 years on their legacy board, helped pass the campaigns in Westlake. I've been endorsed by the Stonewall Democrats, the big gay and lesbian club in Cleveland. I've been endorsed by Carol Winters, the board of directors in Westlake. This is someone who knows me well. She's board of education president. I've been endorsed by Janet Carson. She's the chair of the chairs for Ohio, the Ohio Democratic Party. She's the chair of all the chairs for the different counties. So I've tried to stay within my district and get people that you may know, that you may know of, to give you a better sense of relevance to who I am. I came into the campaign late at the end of January, so I'm hitting all my meetings, certainly hitting a lot of PTA meetings to meet moms, to have the discussions, and I'm happy to come to any setting that you have, that you'd like me to come to, just to meet your neighbors, or to talk, or have a coffee talk, anything that you think is appropriate. I'm Susan Moran Palmer, and I'm happy to take your questions. Sure.
Susan, first, thanks for coming. I'd like to go back to your opening comments. I assume that being from Youngstown, you're a long-time Democrat.
Yes.
I appreciate the comments very much about the different employment models that you described, the lady that you described, and this is not something new. This has been going on for some time. The independent contractor model you described was rampant when Bill Clinton was president. We had a Democratic president for 8 years by the name of Barack Obama, a House Speaker by the name of Nancy Pelosi. And this issue that you raised, which is certainly, obviously out there was not corrected by various Democratic administrations. So what I'd like to do is dig deeper into your Democratic psyche, so to speak, and get your thoughts about why do you think that this problem has not, A, been recognized by the Democratic Party, and B, addressed by the Democratic Party?
I would think certainly for President Obama, you know, he came in right in the middle of financial crisis. Any job was a good job at that point. And I think that was part of it. And I think some of the abuses, many of the abuses started around that time as we were going through the financial recovery. That's when they started adding the non-compete clauses for low-wage workers. One of the colleges got rid of their cafeteria workers, and they had a 2-year non-compete to work in any food service, as if they have any kind of intellectual property or anything like that. And it's great. You know, lawn services, non-compete clauses. Long-haul truckers, non-compete clauses. Where don't you go as a trucker? You know, where don't you go? And Ohio is an enforcement state. You know, California is the only one that doesn't enforce non-compete clauses, and they're brutal. So I think there's some things we can address. I don't think low-wage workers should have any non-compete clauses. I think that's insane. I mean, it's a way to push down wages and keep them from going to a higher-paying job, and that's the point, without question. I think independent contractors, there are labor laws on the books. They simply haven't been enforced. I think the Obama administration was focusing on the overtime pay, you know, bumping everybody's pay up, not just from the minimum wage, trying to move that up, but trying to get the overtime paid well above that ridiculous $26,000 mark. All the, you know, assistant managers at McDonald's that get abused for an extra 5 hours a week. So I think they picked and chose what they were going after. I don't think they focused on the independent contractor. I mean, FedEx has lost at least 6 lawsuits across the country based on how the supervisors didn't follow the rules that the company set out, and they've lost them all.
So would you agree then that the Democratic Party has lost its soul in terms of being the party of labor, being from Youngstown? And what can we do as the local, you know, grassroots Democrat soldiers, foot soldiers, to you know, press our leaders to regain their spine regarding supporting labor?
Well, and I think what happened is Democrats got labeled as anti-business. I really do. Okay. So they started getting weak on labor standards. And I'm not just talking unions or right-to-work states and all that stuff. You know, obviously half my family's still union. I think they lost their way and they started pushing back on the business. The opportunity we have in 2018 is huge. Because basically, as far as I'm concerned, the Republican Party, other than their tax cut, they're abandoning business. You know, the anti-trade, I mean, they are abandoning businesses, and that tax cut's going to mean nothing if you've got a 25% tariff on, for our district, it's farming that's going to get slapped. I mean, it's huge. I mean, Wayne County has 2,000 farmers exporting soybeans and corn. It's going to crush them. At South Medina County as well. And their commodities have dropped. Corn's dropped in half in the last 5 years. So they're already fighting low prices to begin with. You slap a tariff on them, and you know, and these are families, 3-4 generations of farming, and they are not going to hold on to their farms. They were already pretty heavy in debt. So I think it's an opportunity for the Democratic Party to be fiscally responsible and free trade. And I know that's not a popular thing to say. I know a lot of people like the idea of tariffs, but I think we're all going to learn that lesson here really soon. Business-wise, I think you're going to learn really quick. As I did growing up, you know, coming out of Youngstown, tariff. Right. And then as I got up into the business world and I started managing people and seeing things, you realize what damage you can do to the overall economy, without question. So I do not support tariffs. I don't have any trouble with enforcement at a WTO level. I actually loved the border adjustment tax idea. And that was Paul Ryan's. The idea that everything coming into the country got a 25% tax and everything going out had no tax was fantastic. That's a consumerism tax. That's a VAT tax. You know, and that's a great way to shift, because companies are just running away from us for taxes. You know, they get a big tax cut, it's not going to make any difference. They're still going to run away. Amazon's down like 5% tax they pay. I mean, they're going to continue to do the shell game to move their money around. They can't get away from it with the border adjustment tax. If they're making their Apple phones overseas and they're shipping them back here to sell, thank you, where's my 25%? And I'm all for it. Yeah, let's go. We're a massive consumer market, and we do not use that power enough. The most I've seen it used is lately when people are boycotting things. You know, whether it's a Fox News show that attacks the students, or it's now the financial firms are getting into it, telling gun manufacturers, we are not financing anything you sell unless you follow A, B, and C rule. So everyone's kind of getting in the game, and I think it is a very good opportunity for the Democratic Party if we can show fiscal strength. And I think it can be done. And again, you mentioned my Youngstown. It's hard not to find Youngstown to be cheap as well. Right. It really is. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Susan.
Sir.
With the exception of the Obama 2012 campaign, we Democrats have done a very lousy job of communicating our message to the voters, and that's shown up in the elections.
Yes.
The previous two candidates who got the Democratic nomination for the 16th, let's just say that those campaigns left a little bit to be desired. I'll be charitable. Okay. Back in the days when I was active with the DNC, when somebody would come out, they're going to run for Congress, we would say, we want to see a poll or we want to see a plan. Now, obviously, you've got some competitors in here. I don't want you to give away secrets, but where do you see yourself from, let's call it a poor man's poll, and what is your plan to communicate your message to the voters of the 16th district?
Well, since I came into the race pretty late, you know, end of January, it's been a sprint, man. You know, just getting your name out there and moving forward. Now, for several funders that we were doing fundraising with, they needed who's your campaign manager, who's your finance manager, what's your strategic plan, just like any other business plan you do, right? So we laid it all out, how we think we're going to get through it. You know, the district itself is 55% female. I am the only woman running. There is first time in my life that's been a positive. So ever has not been a downside. So, and certainly, you know, as I semi-tease about the gun threats in my district, that is what I hear, certainly Cuyahoga, Summit, the northern areas of the district, a lot of concern about the gun violence. And it's not just kids, it's mom and dad talking about it, it's grandma and grandpa talking about it. I went to a meeting in Summit County, and it was a county council meeting, and there was.
How are you going to get that message across?
Yeah.
What is the mechanism? What do you envision doing to get that message across?
Well, I think it's fair to say, regardless of who the nominee is, they're going to be outspent.
Right.
There's no question about it. So I think for me, the question becomes, can I buy your vote? I think that's a very powerful message. When you have someone coming in from the district who's never lived here, right? They just moved into the district to run for Congress, right? And that's both Republican candidates at this point have moved in the district. So I want to be a congressman more than I'm a member of this community. I don't live here. I don't know any of you. I don't know anything about your lives. So they're coming into, certainly Mr. Gonzalez is coming in to buy a vote, all right? I want to be a congressman. I'm going to come here. I'm going to throw an enormous amount of money at it and see if that works. And I think Ohio voters are going to hear that. I think Ohio voters are going to say, oh, how long have you lived here? 18 years. You raised your kids here? Yeah, all went to public schools. You have to connect with your voters as you go. My communication has been very straight every time, right down the line. Gun violence, healthcare crisis. You know, and I don't veer from my communication plan after years of business. I know you can't get too broad. I'll answer any question you ask me, but I'm going to hit my 3 main topics every time I open my mouth. Every single time, everywhere I speak. The story may change in the beginning, but the communication message is the same every time. I hit usually 2 events a night. Fundraisers are usually on weekends. So I am in the entire district, and I can't say that a lot. A lot of people, I don't see people out and about. So I'm hitting it hard, lots of grease, at least to get through the primary.
Are you a full-time candidate now, or are you still?
I'm working full-time and then doing this in the evenings and weekends. And that was a personal choice. 2 of the fathers that I'm running against, one's a stay-at-home dad, and one is a retired JAG officer. So neither one of them are currently working, but everybody else is working full-time. So, sure.
I'm wondering how you can say fixing healthcare is going to be easy when we have never fixed it before. Yeah. And the other question is, what are you going to do to protect healthcare?
Well, first off, I mean easy in the fact that it's not a difficult way to get there. It's politically difficult. It is not difficult in actuality to get it done. We can do it. And I differentiate myself from my competitors that Medicare for all, for someone that comes into healthcare, it's too far of a reach. We don't have enough primary care physicians in this country to cover it. We're about 25% too low. So it looks great on a bumper sticker, and I get it, and that may be where we get 10 years from now. We cannot take that leap. We're not going to have the coverage, and the message is going to get lost. And as
what about lowering the age for Medicare?
I mean, I don't have any problem with any of those options. And you can get it done in a couple different ways that you can get it done. But cutting the cost out of these programs is what people are going to notice. That's what your voters are going to see when their drug costs come down. They're going to see it. Yeah.
So I'm curious, you said we don't have enough primary care physicians in this country to do that. Yeah. So I'm assuming you have numbers on countries that do. What's the per capita number of doctors that they have in Canada versus the U.S.?
Well, this is another oddity of the United States, okay? So for the last 15 years or so, we've been, and I will get back to women's health care after that. The last 15 years or so, we've been importing physicians. Other countries subsidize their educations, right? So we import them in. If you went to VA 10 years ago, there was no one who grew up here. No one didn't exist, because that was their way into the country, and there's nothing wrong with that. And now when you're in rural settings, you go to Worcester Hospital, you go to the outlying hospitals, all foreign born. Because now you can get an education in Lebanon for a fraction of the cost, $5,000 a year, to get your college education and medical school, and then just immigrate to the United States. Well, our smart kids can't come up because that's $200,000 in debt to get your medical degree. So we're stabbing ourselves in the foot. It's dumb, but we do a lot of things like that to save money. It's cheaper that way, no doubt, to bring the physicians in.
And especially from a primary care perspective, the primary care physicians aren't making enough to pay off the debt in a quick enough period.
No, they're nowhere close.
That's why all the most of the American physicians are becoming specialists.
Yeah.
There's a wage gap for women in medicine too.
Women, as with so many professions, women tend to pick specialties that have schedules that are workable. Dermatology, you know, I've worked with cardiologists and open heart surgeons most of my professional career, and more cardiologists now, but not as many open hearts. You know, you don't see a lot of women doing open heart surgery. It's demanding. I think it's changing. I think we went from a 2-2 doctor marriages. How many physicians of yours are married to other doctors? Yeah. So, I mean, they're seeing each other as equals, and they work equally as they go out. So I do think that will improve. Now, as far as women's health care, I find the lack of conversation about long-term birth control maddening. It is the panacea for our country to break the poverty cycle, okay? If we made long-term birth control available to all Medicaid recipients, Medicaid expansion recipients, think of the difference. I don't want to go just to the financial, think of the people. If you could have one child instead of 4 in 5 years, you can get job training, you can increase your wages at work, you can focus on that one child, you can expand and keep growing it, and it breaks that cycle of poverty. And then the financial aspect. You know, at $15,000 a year that Medicaid is paying for each child, if you have a child every year you're having a kid because you don't have access to long-term birth control. And I'm a practicing Catholic. I am not slamming religious people. There are long-term forms of birth control that are preconception. So if you live in a religious state, take those. They'll be a little more expensive, but you'll still stay. Your return on investment is probably 6 to 1. I mean, it's an easy thing to do that we just get in our way politically, and it can make a massive difference on so many levels of the society. Yeah, and the abortion, I mean, how can that not be something everybody goes to? Same thing with paid parental leave. It doesn't have to be crazy. You know, 4 weeks for a natural birth, 8 weeks for a C-section, that's what's medically recommended. It doesn't have to be crazy. That would also lower the abortion. You gotta put your money where your mouth is. If you're truly pro-life, then you should care that someone can't go to work 2 days in.
And maintaining Planned Parenthood clinics, keeping them open would help too.
I don't think that fight's ever gonna go away. I think you're gonna have to change state legislatures before you're gonna have to change it.
I hope of you.
Yeah.
That's what elections are for.
Tara's got several other speakers tonight, but are you going to be able to stay here to continue the question and answer session?
I would be absolutely happy to.
Fantastic.
Sir?
I have somewhat of a concern, which is a little bit ironic because we got the moms
Moms Demand Action.
Right. So part of what you said went a lot into gun culture, but specifically video games, which to me strikes me as a GOP/NRA talking point.
Yeah, it's a distraction.
In fact, I've been doing a little sidewalk action here every Saturday since July, and the past few weeks I've been holding a sign that says, "It's a gun thing," because, you know, the other side likes to, their only good argument is, I like guns. But they like to say all kinds of things, like it's mental health, it's video games, it's this, it's that. And the big one, you know, you're not taking my guns. Nobody wants to take your guns. But, it's concerning me that was such a big part of your...
I don't mean to feed the fodder, but it is different in the United States than it is in other countries. I don't care if kids in Canada play single-player shooter guns. They don't have access to what we have access to here. And it's more recent.
But there are countries like, I think Australia would be a good example, because that's probably the closest gun culture to what we have, and they did not eradicate guns there. They have guns.
Yes.
But they do not have mass shootings anymore.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
and
they took care of it the first time.
They wiped out the weapons, and everybody had to give back their long guns.
They still have, what do they still have?
Single shot, single shot shotguns.
Yeah. You know, so they still have weapons that can do a lot of damage.
And again, to me, it's just like the medical. If I try to get people from A to Z, I'm going to get nowhere. I'm going to still be at A. And that's where we've been. How long have we been here? I mean, all these gun laws relaxed in the last 15 years. Kasich's entire term. One gun law relaxation after another. Every single one. We had a Westlake kid picked up right after the Colorado theater shootings in Aurora. The Westlake police had an off-duty cop there. Caught a kid in the theater with a backpack full of guns and ammunition. You know what they could do to him? Nothing. They took him in, checked for warrants, no warrants for his arrest. There was a small fine, because the state had reduced the fine when you go in when it's posted no guns. He went in, he had to pay a fine, and it's gone, and now the fine's gone. Now you don't get a fine. Now they have to ask you to take your weapons away. Didn't you see my sign on the door? You get a one for you.
That passed.
Yeah.
Of course it passed.
And don't forget, we have several gun relaxation laws in front of Congress right now.
And in front of the state legislature.
Yeah, but at a federal level.
Stand your ground stuff. In the state legislature.
So we got to fight what's coming first, and then we can move forward. But I'm with you.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you, and I will stay.
So,
Thank you.
we're gonna get through this.